I woke up to the sound of a slamming door and loud voices downstairs. The clock on the bedside table read 6 in the morning, too early to wake up voluntarily, but too late to try to go back to sleep. I slowly sat up on the bed, wrinkling my aching joints. My arthritis had been plaguing me more than usual for the past 3 days, but I tried not to show it. "Grandma!" came a sonorous voice from the first floor. "Are you awake? Mom says she's running late and you need to take us to school." I sighed. Of course Meredith is late. When has my daughter not been late? And of course I have to be ready to pick up my daughter's fallen responsibilities again, despite my aching joints and sleepless night. "Coming, sweetie," I replied, trying to keep my voice upbeat. In the bathroom, I quickly washed my face, looking at my reflection. 62 years old, wrinkles, gray hair, tired eyes. But inside, I still feel like the same woman who once dreamed of being a photographer, of traveling, of seeing the world. Dreams put on hold for the sake of a family, a husband, a daughter. Now that Howard's dead, all that's left are responsibilities. I found a painkiller in the medicine cabinet, swallowed the pill, and began to dress. The clothes in the closet were functional and practical, no frills. Meredith's house had no room for such luxuries as my personality. The kitchen was in its usual chaos. 10-year-old Lily and 8-year-old Joshua sat at the table, staring at their tablets. Uneaten cereal was sloshing around in the milk. "Good morning, darlings." I kissed each of them on the top of their heads. "Where's your mom?" "In her room," Joshua mumbled, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Yelling at someone on the phone." I nodded. That was a familiar occurrence too. Meredith Bonham, the head of marketing at the technology company, was always dealing with work issues in a high-pitched tone of voice. Her energy and pressure helped her climb the career ladder, but in family life, those qualities created constant tension. "Will you finish your breakfast?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I don't want to," the children said in sync. "Then let's get ready for school. Where are your backpacks?" While the children were looking for their textbooks and putting away their things, Meredith flew into the kitchen, tall, slender, with perfect hair and makeup, in an impeccable business suit. Beautiful, as always, and annoyed, as usual. "Mom, will you take them? I have a meeting in 40 minutes, and those idiots in sales got it all mixed up again." "Sure, honey," I nodded. Just, just what?" Meredith didn't even look at me, checking something on her phone. "I'm not feeling well today. Arthritis." I stopped talking when I saw my daughter roll her eyes. "Again? Mom, you find a new ailment every day. Your back, your heart, your joints. Can't you go a day without complaining?" "I'm not complaining, I'm just—" "Lily, Joshua," Meredith interrupted me. "Hurry up and get ready, Grandma's taking you to school." After Howard died 3 years ago, Meredith suggested I move in with them, saying that a single woman of her age shouldn't live alone. I sold my husband's house, and I used the money for a down payment on Meredith's new, larger house. Since then, I'd lived on the second floor in a small room Meredith called the guest bedroom, even though there were never any other guests. My role quickly became obvious: free nanny, housekeeper, cook, and chauffeur. Anything but a mother and grandmother deserving of respect. "Meredith, honey," I began gently as the children ran off to pack. "I thought maybe we could talk about my situation here. I'm grateful for the roof over my head, but now." "Really, Mom?" Meredith pulled away from the phone and looked at me with obvious irritation. "I have a meeting in 35 minutes and you want to talk about your feelings." "Not just feelings. I was thinking maybe I should get a job, a place of my own." Meredith laughed, but there was no mirth in her laugh. "A job? At your age? With your education? Mom, be realistic. Who needs you? You don't even have a profession." The words hurt worse than arthritis. I didn't finish college, marrying Howard my sophomore year. I've been a homemaker my whole life, raising Meredith, supporting my husband. My skills had no value in the job market. You could have been grateful," Meredith said sharply. "We shelter you, feed you, clothe you. A lot of old people would dream of that. And all you do is complain about your health and think of some job." I felt a lump come to my throat. I nodded silently and turned away so my daughter wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. Maybe Meredith was right. Maybe I should be grateful. But why should gratitude feel like imprisonment? The day went on as usual. I drove the kids to school, ignoring the sharp pain in my joints. When I returned, I cleaned the house, did the laundry, made dinner, and picked up the kids from school. When we got home, I helped them with their homework despite the worsening headache. By late afternoon, I was feeling quite ill. My fever was up, my whole body ached, I rarely got sick, but now I felt like I had a bad cold or flu. I took an antipyretic and lay down, hoping I'd be better by the time Meredith got home. But when my daughter got home around 8 p.m., I was still burning up with fever. Mom? Meredith peeked into my room. The children say you've been acting strange all day. What's the matter? I think I'm sick, I said weakly. I have a fever. My whole body aches. Meredith frowned and came closer, but stopped a few steps away from the bed. The flu? Her voice sounded worried, but not out of concern for me. Mom, I have an important presentation in 3 days. I can't afford to get sick, and neither can the kids. I took my medication. I tried to reassure her. Maybe it's just, you need to leave, Meredith said suddenly. What? I wasn't sure I heard correctly because of the noise in my ears. Leave, temporarily. Until you get better, we can't risk it. I sat up slowly on the bed, trying to make sense of my daughter's words. Where will I go, Meredith? I have no other home. To a hotel? To a friend's? Meredith looked annoyed, like I was making trouble for her on purpose. I don't know, Mom. But you can't stay here if you have the flu. You know Joshua's asthmatic. He can't be sick. I don't have money for a hotel, I said quietly. And I don't have any friends. After I moved here, I lost touch with everyone. It was true. Living in my daughter's house, I gradually lost all social ties. I was constantly busy with the kids and household chores, and Meredith didn't encourage visits from old moms to her modern home. Jesus, Mom, Meredith splashed her hands. Always drama, always trouble. She left the room, slamming the door loudly. A few minutes later, the door opened again. Meredith tossed some bills on the bed. Here, $7. That's enough for a bus to the center and a cup of tea. There's a homeless shelter at the center, and they take the sick too. I stared at the money in a daze. You're, kicking me out, your mother? Sick? Don't be so dramatic, Meredith cut me off. It's only temporary. Just for a couple days until you get better. I can't risk my children's health or my career. But I'm your mother. My voice shook with resentment and distrust. I raised you. I took care of you when you were sick. I was always there for you. I don't need a sick mother, Meredith suddenly screamed. Go away. You were already a burden, and now you're a threat to my family. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I felt something inside me break the last thread that held me to my daughter. I'll pack, I said quietly. Only the essentials, Meredith added quickly. And don't touch anything we bought you. I nodded. Slowly I got out of bed, pulled an old suitcase out from under the bed, and started putting away the few personal belongings I had. A picture of Howard, 2 books, a few articles of clothing I'd brought from the old house, a small box of cheap jewelry. My whole life fit into one shabby suitcase. Meredith stood in the doorway, tapping her foot impatiently. Hurry up, please. It's past the kids' bedtime and you're spreading germs all over the house. I closed my suitcase, grabbed my coat, and walked slowly to the door. In the hallway, I saw Lily and Joshua peering out of their rooms with frightened faces. Is Grandma leaving? Joshua asked. Grandma's going to be sick somewhere else for a while so you don't get infected, Meredith explained. She'll be back soon. It was a lie, and I could see that the children realized it. I walked toward them, intending to hug them goodbye, but Meredith stopped me with a sharp gesture. Don't go near them. You're sick. I froze, then nodded slowly. I love you, I said to my grandchildren. Be good. We love you too, Grandma, Lily said quietly. Meredith walked me to the front door. She didn't say a word, just handed me the car keys. You can drive to the center and then leave the car in the parking lot at the supermarket. I'll pick it up tomorrow. I took the keys, feeling stunned. Everything that was happening seemed like an unrealistic nightmare. I stepped out onto the porch into the cool evening air, and the door behind me immediately slammed shut. Sitting behind the wheel, I stared at the house I had lived in for the past 3 years. The house that had never been my home. I started the engine and slowly pulled onto the road, not knowing where to go or what to do next. $7 in my pocket, my whole life in my suitcase, and an emptiness in my heart. You're right, I made a mistake. The plan was to have the lottery ticket win in the next chapter. Let me rewrite that part, making the ticket unchecked for now, not a losing ticket. Nighttime Millville greeted me with a cool breeze and empty streets. I'd left Meredith's car in the supermarket parking lot like she'd asked, and now I stood with my suitcase in the middle of a city that, in 3 years, had never felt like home to me. The signs winked with neon lights, and the occasional passerby hurried about their business, oblivious to the elderly woman with the tattered suitcase. The temperature continued to rise, and I felt hot and chilled. My head was spinning and my legs were shaking. I sat down on a bench near the bus stop, trying to collect my thoughts. There were $7 in my pocket, all that was left of my old life. $7 for a new life at the age of 62. For a moment, I caught myself laughing. Quietly, almost silently, but heartily. The situation seemed so ridiculous and absurd that I could only laugh. I, Fidelia Wampler, who had done everything right all my life, found myself on the street with $7 in my pocket. I raised my daughter with love, supported my husband, sacrificed my dreams for my family, and this is the result. You should have seen it, Howard, I whispered, looking up at the starry sky. Your princess threw me out like a stray dog. I often talk to my late husband. Howard died of a heart attack 3 years ago, leaving me alone. He was always afraid I wouldn't make it without him. You're too kind, Fiddy, he used to say. People take advantage of that. He was right. Howard adored our daughter, had spoiled her since she was a baby. Meredith was his princess who never did anything wrong. Even when she began to drift away from us, immersed in her career, he found excuses for her infrequent visits and brief phone calls. She's building her life, Fiddy. It's normal. I sometimes wondered, what would he say now? Would he have found an excuse for the act as well? The wind picked up, and I wrapped myself tighter in my coat. I had to decide where to go. The homeless shelter Meredith had mentioned? I shuddered at the thought. Had I really become homeless at the age of 62? I stood up and walked slowly down the brightly lit street. The storefronts had already closed, but a few cafes still glowed with warm light. In one of them, I noticed few customers. Eunice's coffee shop, read the modest sign above the entrance. Something about the place seemed welcoming, and I decided to go in. At least it was warm, and a cup of hot tea might help with the chill. The bell above the door jingled melodiously as I entered. Inside smelled of fresh pastries and coffee, a few tables, an old-fashioned bar counter, worn but clean couches. The place looked cozy, like from another era, my era. Good evening, the woman behind the counter greeted me. What can I do for you? She was about my age, maybe a little younger, with bright red hair, gathered in a casual bun, and lively brown eyes. Her name tag said Eunice. A cup of tea, please, I said, setting my suitcase down next to the high stool at the counter. The hottest you've got. Bad day? Eunice asked, filling the kettle with water. I grinned unhappily. You could say that. She didn't ask further, for which I was grateful. Placing the steaming cup of tea in front of me, she turned her attention to the other customers. I sipped the tea slowly, feeling the hot liquid warming my frozen body. Thoughts swirled haphazardly in my head. What to do next? Where to go? Do I have any chance of a fresh start at my age? Money. I needed money. I had a small pension, but all my papers were left at Meredith's house. Did I have any savings? After the house was sold, most of the money went towards the down payment on my daughter's house. The remaining small amounts Meredith saved for me. I didn't even know which account. Are you all right? Eunice's voice snapped me out of my reverie. You don't look so good. I looked at my reflection in the mirror behind the counter. Pale face, feverish blush on my cheeks, disheveled gray hair. Yeah, I didn't look too bad. Just a little sick, I said, trying to smile. And I ran into some unexpected circumstances. Eunice looked at me, suitcase by my side, and something understanding flashed in her eyes. I close in half an hour, she said. Would you like something else? I looked at the menu hanging over the counter. The prices were quite affordable, but I remembered that I only had $7. How much is tea? I asked. $2.50. That would leave me with $4.50. What could I do with that kind of money? My gaze fell on the small stand by the cash register where they sold lottery tickets. Howard and I never played the lottery. He thought it was a waste of money. There's less chance of winning than of being bitten by a shark in your own bathtub, he liked to say. But now, what did I have to lose? Could I have one lottery ticket? I asked, pointing to the booth. Sure. Eunice tore off one ticket and placed it in front of me. $2. I handed her $7, all I had. She gave me change $2.50. Exactly half of my fortune went for the tea and the ticket. Do you play often? Eunice asked, nodding at the lottery ticket in my hands. Never, I answered honestly. This is the first time. Good luck then. They say beginners are lucky. I tucked the ticket in my pocket, deciding to check it later. Right now, I wouldn't even have the energy for the disappointment of losing. Maybe I should have kept a little hope alive for tonight. I'll check tomorrow, I said, smiling weakly. I'd already gotten my share of bad news today. We both laughed, and I suddenly felt a little better. I sipped my tea, watching Eunice serve the last customers and begin to close the cafe. There was something soothing about the way she moved, the way she wiped down the tables and set up the cups, humming something to herself. Pardon my indiscretion, Eunice said, returning to the counter, but do you have somewhere to go? I hesitated to answer. Lying seemed pointless, but the truth was too humiliating. Not really, I finally admitted. I have a complicated situation. Eunice nodded as if that explained everything. That's what I thought. I have a room upstairs, you know. My daughter used to live there, but she moved out a long time ago. I could offer it to you for a few days until you sort out your difficulties. I was stunned. A strange woman offering me shelter without knowing anything about me. Why? I could only ask. Eunice shrugged her shoulders. Because someone once helped me when I was in trouble, and because you remind me of my mother. She wouldn't forgive me if I left a woman her age on the street like that. She smiled. Besides, I've been looking for an assistant at the cafe for a long time. If you agree, we can discuss a mutually beneficial cooperation. The offer seemed unrealistic, too good to be true. But I had no choice. Yeah, I don't know how to thank you, I said, tears welling up in my eyes. But I can't accept such generosity for free. I can really help out at the cafe. I'm a good cook and… We'll talk about that tomorrow, Eunice interrupted me gently. Right now you need to rest. You look like you're about to collapse. She was right. My strength was failing me, my fever was getting worse, and my headache was becoming unbearable. Wait a minute. I'll close the register and we'll go upstairs, Eunice said. While she was finishing up, I pulled a picture of Howard out of my suitcase. He was smiling his trademark smile that always made my heart warm. Look, darling, I whispered. I think I've been lucky enough to meet an angel. Maybe it was you who sent him. Are you ready? Eunice appeared beside me with a bunch of keys in her hands. I nodded, tucking the picture back into my suitcase. Eunice helped me up the narrow stairs to the back of the coffee shop. The small apartment above the coffee shop was simple but cozy. A living room with a worn sofa, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. This will be your room. Eunice opened the door to the smaller of the bedrooms. Inside was a bed, a dresser, and a small desk. The bathroom is across the hall. I live next door. Make yourself comfortable, and I'll make something for your cold. I was alone in the room, still in disbelief. In the morning, I had a house not my own, but a roof over my head. In the afternoon, I was on the street with $7. And now I had shelter again and maybe a job. Life had surprises I couldn't have anticipated. I laid out the few belongings I had, changed into my nightgown, and sat down on the edge of the bed. The lottery ticket lay on the table next to me, untouched. I didn't bother checking it. I was too tired for another disappointment. Tomorrow would be a new day, and who knows what it would bring. Maybe my luck would finally turn around. Eunice returned with a tray containing a cup of some kind of herbal concoction and a plate of sandwiches. Drink this, she handed me the cup. It's my grandmother's old recipe. Works for everything but a broken heart. Is there a recipe for a broken heart too? I asked, taking the cup. Time, she answered simply. And new people in life. Get some rest, Fidelia. Tomorrow will be a new day. She walked out, closing the door quietly behind her. I drank the potion, which tasted surprisingly good, ate half a sandwich, and went to bed. Fatigue and sickness were taking their toll, and my eyes closed on their own. Before I fell asleep, I thought about the $7 I'd found myself on the street with. $2.50 for the tea, $2 for the lottery ticket. That left $2.50. So little, but maybe enough to start a new life. And I also thought of Eunice, the woman who had reached out to a stranger without asking too many questions. I've rarely met people like that. Maybe it's a sign that all is not lost, that there is room in the world for people like me, not old but not yet broken by life. You're absolutely right, it's a narrative error. She can't shop until she gets the winnings. Let me fix that part. The morning greeted me with an unaccustomed silence. No one banging on the door demanding breakfast, no one yelling from the other room for me to get ready faster. The small bedroom above Eunice's coffee shop was warm and quiet. I awoke to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries coming from downstairs. The clock on the bedside table read 8 in the morning. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept that long. The sickness had receded, my fever was down, and though I was still weak, I felt much better. Eunice's medication had worked. I got up, dressed, and walked over to the small mirror above the dresser. Pale face, faded eyes, gray hair that hadn't known a good cut in a long time. At 62, I look 70. Years of worry and anxiety, years of forgetting about myself, thinking only of others, were reflected in every wrinkle on my face. My gaze fell on the lottery ticket on the nightstand. I didn't have the strength to check it yesterday, and I didn't believe in winning. I took the ticket, thinking I'd have to remember to throw it away later, but why not look at it right away? I rubbed the protective layer with a coin left over from yesterday's change. 3 numbers showed up under the silver coating, 800, 800, 800. 3 identical numbers meant a win. But what did they mean? $800? That would be nice. I could get a room, buy some cheap clothes, hang on for a while until I got a job. I went down the stairs to the coffee shop. Eunice had already opened the place, and a few early customers were eating breakfast at the tables. When she saw me, she smiled and waved. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank you." I walked up to the counter. "Your medicine works wonders." "I'm glad to hear it. Hungry." She pointed to a display of pastries. "Very," I admitted. "But first I need to know something. What do these numbers mean?" I handed her a lottery ticket. Eunice took it, glanced at it, and raised her eyebrows in surprise. 800, 800, 800? She looked from the ticket to me. "You won." "I understand." I nodded. "But how much? $800? Eunice looked at me strangely, then laughed softly. "No, honey, not $800. $800,000. You hit the jackpot." I felt my knees go weak. Eunice quickly walked around the counter and helped me into the nearest chair. $800,000, I whispered. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." Eunice handed me a glass of water. 3 identical numbers, 800 is the grand prize. Congratulations, you are now a rich woman. I couldn't believe it. It seemed unreal, like a fantasy dream. Yesterday, I was homeless with $7 in my pocket. Today, I'm $800,000. What? What am I supposed to do now? I asked, still in disbelief. "First, drink some water," Eunice said softly. "Then have some breakfast. And then I'll call my nephew. He works at the bank. He'll help you with all the formalities." I sat stunned by the news while Eunice put coffee and a plate of hot pancakes in front of me. The customers around me continued to eat their breakfast, unaware that a miracle had just happened right next to them. $800,000 was a sum I had never even dreamed of. A sum that could have changed my whole life. "Did you tell anyone you bought the ticket?" Eunice asked, sitting down next to me. I shook my head. "Only you and my late husband," I smiled weakly. "And he found out about it after I bought it." Eunice nodded. "Good. Let's keep it a secret for now. News like this travels fast, and you need time to think it over. Suddenly, rich people are often targeted by con artists and greedy relatives." At the mention of relatives, I involuntarily thought of Meredith. What would she say when she heard about my winnings? Would she want her sick mother back? The irony of the situation did not escape me. Eunice was right. I need to keep the news a secret until I decide what to do next. I ate my pancakes, drank my coffee, and gradually the shock began to pass, giving way to realization. $800,000. It meant freedom, independence, the opportunity to finally live for myself. After breakfast, Eunice called her nephew Nash. He promised to come to the coffee shop after work. In the meantime, Eunice offered me to help her at the coffee shop, to distract myself and not think about winning all the time. I gladly accepted. All my life I had cooked for my family, and the opportunity to do it for others, receiving gratitude instead of constant recriminations, seemed almost as valuable as winning the lottery. During the day, I helped with the baking, washed dishes, and socialized with visitors. Eunice was a patient teacher, and the work proved enjoyable and not too tedious. During my lunch break, when there were hardly any customers in the cafe, I sat by the window, watching the passers-by and thought about the future. What could I do with this kind of money? The possibilities seemed endless. Buy a house? Not a big and cold one like Meredith's, but a cozy, warm one filled with life. Travel? I've always dreamed of seeing Europe, Asia, faraway exotic countries. Take up photography? I loved photography when I was young, but after marriage and Meredith's birth, the hobby was put on hold. How about a little of everything? At 62, many people are already taking stock of their lives, but I suddenly felt like my life was just beginning. The second half that I had secretly dreamed of, but dared not hope for. A chance to live these years for myself, to make up for lost time. The first thing to do is to take care of my health. I've ignored the warning signs my body was giving me for too long. Arthritis, blood pressure problems, being overweight all needed attention. With money, I could afford good doctors, quality medications, maybe even a sanitarium. The second thing was appearance. I looked at my reflection in the window glass. Gray hair, old-fashioned haircut, faceless clothes. I'd never been beautiful, but well-groomed always, until I moved in with Meredith. In her house, I slowly turned into a colorless shadow, an older woman with no personality. It would be time to reclaim myself, and of course, a place to live. A house or apartment of my own where I can feel like a hostess, not an unwelcome guest. A place that will be truly mine. What are you thinking about? Eunice's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. About the future, I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I could think about the future without fear. Eunice took a seat next to me. And what do you see in that future? Myself, I answered after a pause. I see myself. Not someone's mother, not someone's grandmother, not a burden, not a shadow. Just Fidelia Wampler, a woman with her own desires, dreams, plans. That sounds wonderful. Eunice squeezed my hand encouragingly. You deserve it. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a young man in an austere suit entered the coffee shop. Eunice introduced him as her nephew Nash. We went up to the apartment above the coffee shop to talk privately. Nash turned out to be a savvy professional. He explained how the winnings worked, what documents were needed, what taxes you'd have to pay. You'll get about $560,000 after taxes, he said. It's still a huge amount of money. I recommend that you don't keep it all in one account. Some of it can be invested in bonds, some in stocks of reliable companies, and some left over for current expenses. I listened to his advice, nodded, but there was only one thought in my head. $560,000. More than $500,000. For a woman who only yesterday had $7, it sounded like a fantasy. I need the papers, I said. They were left at the daughter's house. You can get duplicates, Nash replied. I'll help you with that. But first we need to cash the winning ticket. I suggest we do that tomorrow morning as soon as the lottery office opens. We arranged for Nash to pick me up at 9 a.m. He left his card and left, and I was left sitting in the living room, still not believing what was happening. How do you feel? Eunice asked, bringing tea. I don't know, I admitted honestly. Joy, surprise, fear, a little bit of everything. It's so unexpected. Unexpected but deserved, Eunice smiled. Sometimes the universe does justice in the strangest ways. By evening, I felt well enough to go for a walk. I wanted to get some fresh air, to reflect on what had happened. Eunice lent me a warm jacket, and I took to the streets of Millville. The city looked different than it had yesterday. Or was it me looking at it with different eyes? I was no longer a lost, sick woman with no future. Now I would soon have the means and freedom to choose my own path. I walked past the park, past the municipal buildings, past the shopping center. Next to the latter was a real estate agency. I slowed my step, looking at the pictures of houses and apartments in the window. Some were modest, others luxurious, but they all embodied the same idea: a home, a space of one's own. I didn't dare to go inside. I didn't have any documents or money yet. But for the first time, I looked at these ads not as a pipe dream, but as a real possibility. Soon, very soon, I would be able to choose any of these places, and it would be my home, just mine. Passing by a beauty salon, I involuntarily slowed my step. The window displayed pictures of stylish hairstyles for women of different ages. Something inside me trembled, the desire to change, to become the new Fidelia. I didn't have the money for beauty salons and a new closet yet, but that would change soon enough. I mentally marked this place. The first thing I would do after winning the prize was to come here. At the pharmacy next to the salon, I paused, looking at the display case of medicines and vitamins. Another item on my mental list: a visit to the doctor, a full checkup, treatment for all the problems I'd ignored for so long. I deserved to be healthy and taken care of, including myself. When I returned to the coffee shop, Eunice was busy with the evening customers. I went up to the apartment and sat on the edge of the bed. It had been a busy day, and my emotions were overwhelming. So many plans, so many hopes. I pulled out Howard's picture and set it on the nightstand. "You'd say I was lucky," I whispered, looking at the familiar face. "But you know, Howard, I think I deserve it. All my life I've been doing what I had to do, taking care of others. Now it's time for me to take care of myself." There was a quiet knock at the door, and Eunice came in with a tray. "I've brought your supper," she said. "You must be tired after such a day." "Thank you," I smiled. "You're so kind to me." "You're welcome." Eunice put the tray on the table. "By the way, they're already talking about a big win in town. News travels fast in Millville." "Do they know it's me?" I asked worriedly. "No, of course not," Eunice reassured me. "It's just a rumor that someone in town hit the jackpot, but be prepared. It won't be long before everyone knows. You can't hide news like that." She was right. In a small town, news spreads like wildfire. Soon everyone would know about the winnings, and Meredith would know too. What then? Will she come looking for reconciliation? Will she want her mother back, who's suddenly a valuable asset? "What are you thinking?" Eunice asked, noticing my thoughtfulness. "About the daughter," I admitted. "About what will happen when she finds out." "And what will happen?" "I don't know." I shook my head. "But I'm getting ready for her to try to come back into my life, now that I have money." "Is that what you want?" Eunice asked softly. I was silent for a long time before I answered. "No," I said at last. "I don't. Too much pain, too much humiliation. I've spent 62 years living for others. Now I want to live for myself." Eunice nodded understandingly and left me alone with dinner and my thoughts. And there were many thoughts: about the past that could not be changed, about the present, which was suddenly filled with possibilities, about the future that was now in my hands. The next morning, Nash picked me up as promised. We went to the lottery office, where I presented the winning ticket. The lottery staff confirmed that I had indeed won $800,000. They explained to me the procedure of getting the money. "It will take a few days. You need to fill out a lot of documents, go through identity verification." News of the big win quickly spread around Millville. While we were at the lottery office, journalists from the local newspaper came there. They wanted to interview me, take my picture for the front page. I said yes. It wouldn't take long to find out. "A Mrs. Fidelia Wampler wins $800,000 in lottery" was the headline of the article that was to be published soon. My picture, my name, it would all be there. And Meredith would be sure to see it. After all the formalities, Nash drove me back to Eunice's coffee shop. On the way, he told me that it would take a few more days to get the money, but he had already set up a bank account in my name where the funds would be transferred. "What do you plan to do with the money?" he asked. "To live," I answered simply. "To finally live for myself." Eunice was waiting for me in the coffee shop. She looked worried. "The news is all over town," she said when I entered. "Everyone's talking about your winnings." "So, Meredith will know soon enough," I sighed. "Are you ready for that?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I have time to prepare. The money won't be in the account for a few days." At that moment, the door of the coffee shop opened, and a young woman came running in with a notebook in her hands. "Mrs. Wampler!" She smiled so wide it was almost intimidating. "I'm from the Millville Daily. Can I ask you a few questions for our article?" And so began my new life as a woman who had won the lottery. You're right. I made mistakes in the chronology and logic of the dialogue. Let me revise this chapter with your comments in mind. It's only been a week since the money arrived in my account, $560,000 after taxes. A sum that to me, a woman who had spent her life counting every penny, seemed incredible. The first thing I did was to rent the apartment I had looked at before I won the money. It was bright, spacious, overlooking the park, in a new building near downtown Millville, with modern furnishings and appliances, large windows, and a sunny living room. My apartment, my space, my home. I stood in the middle of the living room, keys in hand, and couldn't believe it was all mine now. No one would tell me what I could and couldn't do here. No one would treat me like an unwelcome guest. For the first time in years, I felt at home. The next step was to update my closet. Eunice helped me pick out a few basics: jeans, pants, blouses, dresses. Nothing flashy or inappropriate for my age, but not the drab, shapeless outfits that many women wear after 60, thinking their time to be attractive has passed. Then there was the trip to the beauty parlor. A young stylist, after examining my gray hair and listening to my wishes, suggested not to paint over the gray, but to make a stylish, short haircut, emphasizing the natural silver shade. "A lot of women pay a lot of money for this color," she said as she worked on my head. "You have it naturally. It would be a crime to hide it." When I looked in the mirror after the job was done, I hardly recognized myself. A short, elegant haircut, light makeup, new clothes. I was a completely different woman. Not a jaded old woman, but a self-confident lady of elegant age. "That's quite a transformation," Eunice commented when I returned to the coffee shop to show her the result. "You look 10 years younger and $1 million more expensive." I laughed, but in my heart I knew she was right. It wasn't about the money or the new clothes or hairstyle. It was about finally feeling like a person, not a free appendix to someone else's life. My transformation wasn't limited to my appearance. I enrolled in a photography class at the local community college, a hobby I dreamed of all my life but never found the time for. I bought a good camera and now went out to the park near my house every morning to capture the morning light playing in the leaves, birds eating breakfast at the feeders, people rushing to work. Nash helped me manage my money wisely. Some of it was invested in safe stocks and bonds, some was in a savings account, and the rest I could spend on running expenses and realizing my dreams. One of those dreams was a trip to Europe. I booked a tour of Italy starting in a month. Rome, Florence, Venice. Cities I had only seen in photos and movies would soon become a reality. I bought guidebooks, downloaded Italian language apps, and learned new words and phrases every night before bed. I met a few interesting people in the photography course. Most of the students were much younger than me, but there were a few people my age. Among them was Elliot Winslow, a 70-year-old widower, a former engineer who, upon retiring, had decided to pursue his creative endeavors. Elliot was intelligent, witty, and, surprisingly, very thoughtful. After a few classes, he invited me in for a cup of coffee. We sat in the cafe for 3 hours, talking about everything in the world: photography, traveling, books, life. It was the first conversation I'd had in years in which I felt more like an equal than an attendant. "You know, Fidelia," Elliot said, walking me home after our second meeting, "I haven't met a woman as interesting as you in a long time." I felt myself blushing. 62 years old and blushing like a schoolgirl. It was so unexpected and so pleasant. Eunice, to whom I had told about Elliot, only winked and said, "See? Life is just beginning." And it was true. Every day brought something new. New knowledge in photography courses, new acquaintances, new experiences. I felt as if I woke up from a long sleep and only now started to really live. But there was one shadow overshadowing my new life: thoughts of Meredith. The news of my winnings was on the front page of the local paper, and I knew my daughter would see it. I waited for her call or visit every day, and the suspense grew with each passing day. The call came 3 days after the article was published. I had just returned from a photography class and was sorting through some new images when the phone rang. When I saw my daughter's name on the screen, I felt my heart sink. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom." Meredith's voice was unusually soft. "Is that you?" "Yes, Meredith, it's me," I said, sitting down in the chair. "Mom, I read about your winnings. Is it true? You really won 800,000? Straight to the point, no greetings, no, how are you? Typical Meredith." "Yes, it's true," I confirmed. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Meredith spoke again, in an even sweeter voice. "Mom, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. We were all so worried when you left. When you kicked me out," I corrected gently. "Let's call things by their proper names, Meredith." There was another pause. I could practically see my daughter searching for the right words. "Mom, I wasn't myself that night. Stress at work, problems with the kids. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so ashamed." Her voice sounded genuinely remorseful, and before I would have believed it, before I would have welcomed any show of attention from her, any chance to return to the family. But now, after everything that had happened, I saw the situation very differently. "Meredith, I appreciate your apology," I said. "But it's been almost 2 weeks. You haven't tried to find me. You haven't called. You haven't asked if I'm alive, if I have a roof over my head, if I have food. I thought you'd be back in a couple days." Her voice became excused. "When you didn't come back, I wanted to call, but I didn't know how to make it up to you. And now you do?" "Mom, please." Her voice became pleading. "Let's meet. Let's talk. The kids miss you. They keep asking when Grandma's coming back." I closed my eyes. Lily and Joshua, no matter what, I missed them. They weren't to blame for their mother's actions. "Okay," I agreed. "Let's meet, but not at your house." "Of course," Meredith agreed hastily. "Where would you be comfortable?" I named Eunice's coffee shop, a neutral territory where I felt comfortable. "Tomorrow at 3?" Meredith suggested. "I'll pick up the kids from school and we'll come over." "Okay," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow." I hung up and sat staring out the window for a long time. Meredith's call wasn't unexpected, but it still reopened old wounds. Part of me still loved my daughter, despite everything that had happened. The other part feared new disappointments. But I was stronger now. I now had my own life, my own interests, my own home. I was no longer dependent on Meredith either financially or emotionally. The next day, I arrived at Eunice's coffee shop half an hour before the appointed time. Eunice, who knew of the upcoming appointment, smiled encouragingly at me. "How are you feeling?" she asked, placing a cup of my favorite herbal tea in front of me. "Strange," I admitted. "I don't know what to expect from this meeting." "Just remember that you're in a winning position now," Eunice said. "You have a choice. You can accept them back into your life or not. It's your decision." I nodded gratefully. Eunice was right. Things were different now. At exactly 3 o'clock, the coffee shop door opened and Meredith and the kids walked in. She looked as flawless as ever. Perfect hair, stylish suit, makeup. But there was something new in her face. Uncertainty, almost fear. She looked around the coffee shop, searching for me with her eyes. When our gazes met, I saw her eyes widen. She didn't immediately recognize me, so much I'd changed over the days. The new haircut, the new clothes, the new self-confidence, it made me a completely different person. "Mom?" she said hesitantly as she approached my table. "Hi, Meredith." I smiled and turned to the children. "Hello, my darlings." "Grandma." Lily rushed over to me, giving me a hug. "You look so cool." Joshua, more reserved, just smiled and said, "Hi, Grandma. We missed you." "I missed you too, little ones." I hugged them both, feeling a lump come up to my throat. Meredith stood nearby, watching our reunion with an uncertain expression on her face. Finally, she sat down at the table too. "You look beautiful, Mom," she said with a fake smile. "A different person." "I feel like a different person," I answered honestly. "A lot has changed these days." Eunice came to our table to take our order. Meredith ordered coffee for herself and milkshakes for the kids. When Eunice stepped away, there was an awkward pause. So, Meredith began, fiddling with her napkin, are you staying at your friend's house now? No, I shook my head. I've rented an apartment not far from here. It's a really nice place. Oh, Meredith looked surprised. I thought, we were hoping you'd come home. This is it. The reason for the visit. Why, Meredith? I asked you directly. Why would I come back? Of course you would, she tried to act surprised. We're family. We belong together. The kids miss you, and frankly, so do I. The house isn't the same without you. Interesting. I sipped my tea. 2 weeks ago, I was a burden and a threat to your family. What's changed? Meredith turned pale. She hadn't expected me to be so blunt. Mother, I apologized. I wasn't myself. Stress, fatigue. You know how stressful my job is. I know. I nodded. I also know that people tend to show their true colors not when things are good, but when things are bad. That night you said what you really thought. That's not true. Meredith raised her voice, then looked back at the children, who were watching our conversation curiously. Children, why don't you go and pick something delicious from the window? When the children had gone, she leaned toward me and spoke more softly. Mom, I'm really sorry about that night. It was a terrible thing to do, I admit that. But we can fix it. We can start over. The family has to be together. What about my health? I asked. Aren't you afraid I'll infect the kids anymore? You look perfectly healthy, Meredith said. Besides, we can hire a good doctor if we need to. Buy medicine. She faltered, realizing she'd said too much. But it was too late. Everything was falling into place. Oh, that's it. I grinned wryly. Now that I have money, I'm not a burden anymore, am I? Now I can take care of my health and return to my family. Mom, you've got it all wrong, Meredith tried to correct the situation. It's not about the money. It's about us being a family. We have to stick together, support each other. Like you stood by me when I was sick? I asked you quietly. How did you throw me out on the street with $7 in my pocket? I already said I was sorry. Meredith sounded annoyed. What do you want? You want me to crawl on my knees? Yes, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but we can fix it. Come home. We'll get you a room of your own, get you everything you need. I looked at my daughter and I saw right through her. She wasn't ashamed of what she'd done. She was ashamed that she had missed out on such a financial asset. I remembered our last fight. Her words, I don't need a sick mother. They had been spoken sincerely, from the heart. And now I was looking at an actress putting on a play. The children returned to the table with cakes, and the conversation had to be interrupted. I spent the next hour with my grandchildren, asking them about school, about their friends, about what they were doing these days. They talked animatedly, interrupting each other, and I caught myself thinking that I really missed them. When it was time to leave, Meredith spoke again about my return. Think about it, Mother. The children will be so happy, and you'll be better off with your family than alone. I'm not alone, Meredith, I said softly. I've made friends. I've signed up for photography classes. I'm planning a trip to Italy. I have my own life now. My daughter's face stretched in surprise. A trip? A course? Mom, at your age, you need peace, care. I'm 62, not 92, I smiled, and I feel great, especially now that I can do what I've always wanted to do. But what about us? Meredith sounded frustrated. What about family? I'll always be happy to see the kids, I said. They can come and visit me. We can take walks together, go to the movies, to the park. But I'm not coming back to your house, Meredith. Never. Is it because of the money? Her eyes narrowed. You're rich now and you don't want to share it with your family? That's it. The real reason for her visit. I felt the last of my doubts dissipate. No, Meredith, I replied calmly. It's not about money, it's about dignity, self-esteem. Because I finally realized that I deserve better than to be used and discarded when I became inconvenient. I turned to my grandchildren. Come visit me anytime, darlings. I'll always be glad to see you. I left the money for the order on the table, kissed the children, and left the coffee shop, feeling my daughter's amazed look on my face. That evening, I received a phone call from Elliot. We agreed to have dinner together at a small restaurant near my house. At dinner, I told him about my meeting with my daughter. You did the right thing, he said, putting his hand over mine. You can't let other people define your worth, even if they are your family. You know, I looked down at my glass thoughtfully. I would have forgiven you before. I would have agreed to come back. Because I didn't think I deserved any better. That I should be grateful for every crumb of attention. And now I know I deserve respect, love, my own space. I deserve to live my life the way I want to live it, not the way it's convenient for others. Elliot smiled. So the real prize isn't the lottery, but finding yourself? That's right, I smiled back. Although the money helped, of course. We both laughed, and I felt the heaviness from today's meeting slowly fade away. There was so much to look forward to: photography courses, a trip to Italy, new friends, maybe even a new relationship. A week passed after the coffee shop meeting. Meredith called me every day, urging me to come back home, but I stood my ground. Finally, she asked for a meeting, one last one, as she put it. I agreed, thinking it would be a good opportunity to set the record straight. We agreed to meet at my new apartment. No kids, just the two of us, like adults capable of having a frank conversation. Meredith arrived at exactly the right time. I opened the door and saw her perfectly dressed with flawless makeup, but with something new in her eyes. Not remorse, no, more like calculation. Come in, I said, letting her into the apartment. Meredith looked around, taking stock of her surroundings. I could see her face change as she noticed the new furniture, the expensive appliances, the stylish accessories. You're settling in nicely, she said, envy well hidden in her voice. Thank you, I pointed to the couch. Have a seat. Tea, coffee? Nothing, thank you. Meredith sat down, putting her purse next to her. I won't be long. I just wanted to talk to you again about our situation. I sat down across from her in the chair, ready to listen to more persuasion and manipulation. Mom, I've been thinking a lot, Meredith began. About us, about that night, about what happened. And I realized I was wrong. We all make mistakes sometimes, don't we? Yes, I agree. But not all mistakes can be undone. But ours can. She leaned forward, looking me in the eyes. We're family, blood. That's more important than anything else. I used to think that too, I said. But that night changed a lot of things. I said I was sorry. There was irritation in her voice. How many times do I have to apologize? It's not about apologizing, Meredith. I shook my head. It's about me finally seeing the truth. What truth? She frowned. The truth about what I've been to you all these years, I said calmly. A free babysitter, a cook, a servant. Not a mother, not a grandmother, a servant. That's not true. Meredith was indignant. You've always been for us. Helpful, I finished for her. As long as I was useful, I was tolerated. As soon as I got sick and became a burden, I was thrown away like a useless thing. Meredith opened her mouth to object, but I held up my hand to stop her. Let me finish. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I need to speak up. She nodded reluctantly, leaning back against the couch. You know what I've realized over these weeks? I continued. That I've been living my whole life for other people. First for my parents, then for Howard, then for you, then for your kids. I was always in the background. My wants and needs were never a priority. And I'd accepted that, believing that was the way it should be. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But when you kicked me out, something strange happened. For the first time in years, I was alone with no commitments, no need to please anyone. And you know what? It was scary, but also liberating. Mom, I'm not finished yet. I interrupted her gently but firmly. And then this weird miracle happened with the lottery ticket. At first, I thought it was just money, just luck. But now I realize it was a chance to start living for myself. Meredith was silent, her face growing tense. And I decided to take that chance, I continued. At 62, to start living the life I wanted to live. To travel, to do photography, to hang out with people who appreciate me for who I am, not for what I can do for them. And there's no room for family in this new life? Meredith asked coldly. There is no room in this new life for those who think of me as a thing to be used and thrown away, I answered. For those who love not me, but my usefulness or my money. Meredith jumped up from the couch, her face contorted with anger. That's what it is! You think I came for money? Didn't you? I asked calmly, not moving from my seat. You're unbearable, she exclaimed. I'm trying to have a relationship and you accuse me of self-interest. Meredith, my voice was quiet but firm. Let's be honest at least for now. If I hadn't won the lottery, you wouldn't have sought me out. I'd still be the sick mom you don't want. She was silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Okay, she finally said. You want honesty? Take it. Yeah, we need the money. James is in business trouble and we're up to our eyeballs in debt. I was hoping you'd help us out because we're family. But you seem to have decided to play the hurt old lady. I'm not playing, Meredith, I said. I'm just finally seeing the truth. And the truth is, you don't need me as a mother. You need my money. What's wrong with that? She waved her hands. It's natural. Parents help their children, always, everywhere. It's a law of nature. Parents help children who respect them, love them, take care of them, I answered. Not those who throw them out on the street with $7 in their pocket. I already apologized for that, Meredith shouted. How many times do I have to apologize? It's not about apologizing, I shook my head. The point is that I no longer believe in their sincerity. So you won't give us the money? She asked bluntly. No, Meredith, I answered firmly. I will not give you money. Not now, not later. You didn't need your sick mother, so you won't need my money. Meredith's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, she hissed. I swear you'll regret it. You'll never see your grandchildren again. That's your right, I said, my heart clenching at the thought of Lily and Joshua. But think about what you'll tell them. That grandma didn't give the money, so she's no longer worthy of their love? Don't you dare tell me how to raise my children. Meredith grabbed her purse and headed for the door. You don't exist to me anymore. You're dead to our family. Goodbye, Meredith, I said quietly as she stood in the doorway. I have loved you all my life and I will love you no matter what, but I won't let you or anyone else use that love against me again. She slammed the door so hard that the walls shook. I was left alone in the silence of the apartment, feeling a strange mixture of bitterness and relief. It was as if the heavy weight I'd been carrying all my life had finally fallen from my shoulders. I went to the window and took a long look outside, where Meredith was getting into her car. Her face was contorted with anger, and she slammed the door shut sharply and sped off, nearly hitting a neighboring car. I watched her car disappear into the distance and realized that this chapter of my life was closed forever. That evening, I called Elliot and told him what had happened. He listened without interrupting me, and then he said, You did the right thing. Sometimes the hardest decision is the only right decision. The next day, Elliot and I went to see the house I'd seen a week before. It was a small but cozy cottage by the lake, 20 minutes from Millville. The place was picturesque, quiet, and perfect for a new life. Do you like it? Elliot asked as we stood on the shore, looking out over the calm water. I love it, I smiled. I'd always wanted to live by the water. Howard always thought it was impractical, and then it was too late. It's not too late now, he took my hand. Now you have the opportunity to fulfill all your dreams. I closed the deal to buy the house the same day. It took a while, but 3 weeks later, I was moving into my new home. Elliot helped with the moving, and Eunice organized a small housewarming party for some close friends. For the first time in my life, I have my own house, I said as we sat on the veranda with glasses of champagne. Not my parents', not my husband's, not my daughter's, mine. To a new home and a new life, Elliot raised his glass. Everyone seconded the toast, and I felt a warm wave of gratitude fill me. I had friends, I had a man who seemed to truly love me, I had the home I'd always dreamed of. A week after moving in, I went to the local animal shelter. All my life I had wanted a dog, but Howard was against it, and in Meredith's house it was out of the question. Now I was free to decide for myself. At the shelter I noticed her right away, a golden retriever with sad eyes. The shelter worker told me that the dog's name was Daisy. She was 7 years old, and she was here after her owner died. No one wanted to take in an old dog. Everyone preferred puppies. You and I are alike, Daisy, I said, stroking her head. Both of us starting our lives over at a young age. Daisy looked at me with such understanding that there was no doubt she would come home with me. The dog quickly got used to the new place and became an integral part of my life. She and I would walk along the lakeshore every morning and I would photograph sunrises, reflections in the water, birds flying over the lake. My passion for photography, which I had abandoned after marriage, was rekindled. I enrolled in an advanced photography course at a local college where I met other enthusiasts of the art. They ranged in age from students to retirees. We often organized joint photo shoots, went out into nature, discussed techniques and methods. For the first time in my life, I had a social circle based on common interests rather than family commitments. Elliot often stayed with me, and 2 months after I moved in, he offered to move his belongings as well. "We're both too old for courting and dating," he said, "and I think we both know we want to be together." I agreed. At 62, there's no point in putting happiness on hold. Every day is too precious. Our relationship with Elliot was nothing like my marriage to Howard. No strict roles, no submission, no sacrifices. We were equal partners, respecting each other's space and interests. Elliot supported my hobby of photography, and I enjoyed listening to him talk about the books he was writing. After he retired, he realized his longtime dream of writing historical novels. In October, as the maples around the lake turned red and gold, Elliot and I set off on a long-planned trip to Italy. For 2 weeks, we wandered the streets of Rome, marveled at the art of Florence, and sailed on a gondola through the canals of Venice. I took pictures of everything I saw, and every evening we would look back at the pictures, remembering the day's experiences. "I never thought I'd start traveling at my age," I said to Elliot as we sat in a small restaurant in Tuscany, watching the sunset over the vineyards. "I never thought I'd meet a woman my age who would turn my life around," he said, raising his wine glass. "Here's to us and our new life." After Italy, we planned a trip to France the following spring, and then perhaps Greece or Spain. The world was suddenly so big and accessible, and I wanted to see as much as possible. I never heard from Meredith. Sometimes I missed my grandchildren and even tried to call, but Meredith's phone was always unavailable and she didn't answer my messages. I hoped that someday, when the children were older, they would decide to reconnect with their grandmother. In the meantime, I tried not to think about the things I couldn't change. One day, while walking with Daisy through Millville, I happened to meet Meredith's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She told me that Meredith was in serious trouble. Her husband James had lost his job, and they had to sell the house and move into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. "They say he invested all their savings in some venture and lost everything," Mrs. Patterson shared. "And your daughter is now working double shifts to support her family." I felt a pang of regret. Despite everything that had happened, Meredith was still my daughter, and I didn't want to hurt her. But I also realized that any attempt I made to help would be seen as a triumph, as confirmation that she had finally gotten what she wanted, my money. "Please tell her that if the children want to visit their grandmother, they are always welcome," I said to Mrs. Patterson. She promised to tell her, though I doubted Meredith would accept the invitation. Life went on. My first solo photo exhibition at a local gallery was an unexpected success. Several pieces sold, and the owner of an art store in a neighboring town offered me a permanent partnership. "You're becoming a celebrity," Elliot joked as I helped hang the photos for the second exhibition. "At 62, starting a career as a photographer is new," I laughed back. But in truth, I felt proud of my accomplishments. For the first time in my life, I was doing something not for others but for myself, and I was being recognized for my talent. On my 63rd birthday, Elliot surprised me by inviting all my new friends to our lake house. Eunice and her husband, neighbors, fellow photographers, even Nash and his family. The house filled with laughter, conversation, music. "To Fidelia," Elliot raised his glass as everyone gathered around the table. "To the woman who proved that life can begin at any age. To the woman who taught me to love again. To the woman who never gives up." Everyone raised their glasses, and I looked at these people who have become a part of my life over the past year and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. A year ago, I was a lonely, unneeded woman living in someone else's house. Today, I am the mistress of my own destiny, surrounded by loving people, with plans and dreams for the future. When the guests had departed, Elliot and I sat on the veranda, looking at the stars reflected in the quiet surface of the lake. Daisy dozed at our feet, occasionally sighing in her sleep. "Happy?" Elliot asked, putting his arm around my shoulders. Very, I said, resting my head on his shoulder.